Today in Across the Fence, we're going to start the conversation on a question that all of us will face one day. What do we want for ourselves and our loved ones at the end of life? It's not necessarily an easy conversation, so we've called on two experts to help get us started. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. In our culture, death and dying are often difficult to talk about. On top of that, research and surveys have found that there are questions and confusion about end-of-life care choices. So this afternoon, we're going to focus on an initiative by the Visiting Nurse Association that encourages people to talk about end-of-life issues and care with their family and doctors. Joining me are Christine Wernicke and Jerry Amori from the Visiting Nurse Association and the VNA's Madison Dean Initiative. Thanks so much for being with us. Christine, the VNA and its partners are encouraging people to start the conversation. What does that mean?
Well, as you said in your introduction, so many of us are really unprepared to face end-of-life decisions, either for ourselves or for our loved ones. At the VNA, we care for thousands of families every year, and so many times we see them facing difficult decisions during a really emotional time. And that's a very hard thing to do for families when facing losing a loved one and also having to understand kind of those options and choices. So Start the Conversation, it was created to help families understand their end-of-life care options when they're not dealing with an emotional situation or a terminal illness or crisis. It also encourages them then, of course, to have a conversation and talk with each other about what it is that they might want for their end-of-life experience, or how they want to handle the decisions at that point in time. And then most importantly, to document those in an advance directive.
Mm-hmm. Why is it important for people to talk about? I know you mentioned you're not talking about talking to patients, you're talking to families, because what happens to one person in a family happens to the whole family.
That's right. When we're caring for people at the end of life, we are caring for the entire family. Hospice care is, of course, there's care provided directly to the person who is dying, but hospice care is also about working with the family. At end of life, it is extremely important that people are in control of the experience, and that's why it's so important to have a conversation. Just having your advance directive completed is a really important step, but a lot of times it won't answer all of the questions, and the only way that we can be sure that our wishes are honored is if we have those conversations with our family so that they know in the certain situations you probably can't predict. They can make those decisions and not be worried that they didn't honor what it is that you know.
Because most people don't even really understand what hospice is.
Most people don't. In fact, 3 out of 4 Americans don't understand the role that hospice plays or understand their options for end-of-life care. I think it's really important for people to know that hospice is not about giving up. It is not just for the last few days. You can be on hospice for months, and it's care that is provided, specialized care that's provided for people who no longer have options to cure an illness or treat that illness towards a cure.
Mm-hmm. And so the VNA is partnering with others to start the Conversation Initiative.
That's right. We're really excited about this because we're partnering with our sister agencies across the state. So the other VNAs and nonprofit home health and hospice agencies have worked together to bring this to families and individuals in all communities in Vermont. We are also partnering with Vermont Ethics Network, who is the organization that is the expert on medical decision-making and advance directives.
You talk about advance directives. Most people don't really have them, and what does it take to do an advance directive?
That's right. In fact, only about 3 out of 10 Americans have an advance directive. Now, every state is different, but in Vermont, we have an advance directive form that you can fill out to help you name what your wishes are. However, you don't need to fill out that form or use that form. You could literally write it on a napkin, and as long as it's witnessed properly, you can use that and it holds up. There's two important aspects of an advance directive. The first is naming your healthcare agent. That's going to be the person that makes decisions for you if you're not able to make those decisions yourself.
The husband, wife, son, daughter.
That's right. And a lot of people feel that if they are unable to make those decisions, then the law just defers that decision to their spouse or a parent. That's not the case in Vermont. That agent does need to be named. And then the rest of it is really talking with your doctor, talking with your family, and talking about what it is that you would want in certain situations and making those decisions ahead of time.
Now, Jerry Morey is a member of the Madison Dean Initiative. That's the VNA's program for educating the public on quality at the end of life. And Jerry, I know talking about death and thinking about the end of life is not something that's very pleasant for most people, but it is really critically important.
Yes, it is. And people need to know what their options are. Many of us come to this very important stage of life. We tend to separate death from living. And actually, death is part of the process of our life and a very important part of our process. And unless we think about it, know what's available to us, know about hospice, for example, which is a Medicare benefit that's paid for through Medicare, then we don't really have a choice unless we know. It'd be like having a graduation party and saying everybody come and not having decided where the food is.
Which is a good point to bring up. We plan for everything in life.
We do. We plan for all kinds of things. And we as Americans are very autonomous. And we want to plan for things. We plan our vacations. We plan everything. So we need to think about this that's a very important part of life. I mean, last year I heard an amazing statistic which kind of tickled me, but it really is true. It's an appalling statistic, actually. The rate of death in the United States is 100%.
Right. I mean, that's the one thing that you can guarantee.
You can guarantee. So are you going to do it your way, or are you going to let decisions be made for you by outside forces?
And so who should have this conversation and when?
Everyone should have the conversation, and you should have it as soon as you think to have it. People have to have the conversations with their families, know what your options are, talk with your physicians, put your plan into writing, because when that time comes of stress, nobody's going to know what your thoughts were, what your values were. Everyone's going to be worried, upset, concerned, and aren't going to think about those things. So by having this conversation first with your family members, first with the people who are close to you, and by the way, family can be defined in all kinds of ways, not just father, mother, sister, brother, or children, but whoever you consider family, make that known, clear in writing, have your advance directive, have your durable power of attorney for health care, know what you would like in all kinds of different situations. What if you developed ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease? What would you want? What would you want if you developed MS and you get do you want to be intubated? Do you need nutrition? What is it that you're willing to have and under what circumstances?
Which is really interesting because, we really do have to educate ourselves on exactly what these terms mean.
Absolutely.
And what it means for your family, because this really is something that you're doing for yourself, but you're really doing it for your family as well.
Right, because if they don't know what you want, they're going to do what they can to prolong your life because they aren't sure and they don't want to make a mistake at this important time of your life. These conversations should be started anytime, anytime. And it doesn't have to be a sad time. You don't have to have had a terminal illness. I mean, you could do it at the birth of a child. Who's going to take care of our child if something happens to us?
Right.
What if we're in that unknown car accident? What happens if you get married? Now we have so many blended families. We have yours, mine, and ours. What happens if we're in a common accident? And how do we want to make sure that the financial aspects of things are taken care of? And as part of that, how do we want the end of our life to be? Do we want to be hooked up to all kinds of machines, or what is it that we really want? Perhaps even, my husband and I, the day of our wedding, we went and signed our wills 25 years ago because we knew that this was something that anything could happen. And we wanted to make sure that for the end of our life it was handled in the right way. So watching a movie, taking part in a fundraiser, any of those kinds of things can create the opportunity to begin that discussion about what is it that you really believe and you want for yourself.
And what happens when a family member doesn't want to talk about this or doesn't want to engage in this kind of conversation, thinks it's morbid, bad luck to talk about that?
Right. And that happens really often, and particularly in the early stages of talking about it. I was just talking to Christine about a friend of mine who just last week, her husband found out he had terminal pancreatic cancer. Up until now, he thought he was going to die of a heart attack. And when we started talking about palliative care, care to make the end of his life as rich as the beginning of his life or the process of his life, she wasn't ready. We know we'll have to have that conversation more than once. We'll have to come back to it. Resistance is usually based on fear. It's someone not knowing what's out there, not knowing what needs to be talked about. And we need to think that it's, again, not just older people, younger people such as, Nancy Krizan, Terry Schiavo. Those are examples to us of the need to have these conversations pretty early on.
And can you just explain for folks who may not be familiar with those names, who these women were?
These were young women who ended up in hospitals for a long time on machinery that basically prolonged their life. Maybe not in a way that they would have wanted it prolonged, creating some real controversy within their families, divisiveness within their families, divisiveness between their families and the healthcare system, and all of that surrounding something that could have been more easily handled.
Stephanie, what about talking to children about these kinds of things? Because it can be scary for children of any age to think, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking with a family recently, and we were talking about the importance of having conversation. And they said, my kids are in their 20s. They're not going to have this conversation with us. And we encourage them, try. And at a minimum, I think you say, well, we know what it is we want, and we have written it down in an advance directive. And this is where it is, so if something should happen to us, it's here. And give them the chance to ask questions. And I think as Jerry pointed out and was going, talking about her friend, is that that's just the starting point. So it is a process, not an event. You don't have the conversation, Monday night at 7 o'clock, and then, okay, you're done.
Right. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
right. We spend a lot of energy in our culture talking about major parts of our lives. We talk a lot about weddings, say, or graduations, or vacation even. It's amazing to me we spend more time talking about vacation and planning that than we do about probably one of the greatest transitions of our lives, and wanting it to be the way we want it. And recognizing that's not giving up. That's taking control. That's a positive step, not a negative step. Approaching our families this way, approaching our doctors this way, knowing what gives you the sense of dignity and what things you're going to want. And palliative care, I think of them as your team. Palliative care and hospice are the people who come in, and there's physicians and nurses and social workers and volunteers and a spiritual guide, spiritual people to help you make this part of your life as rich and as wonderful as the most important occasion of your life. And in many ways, for many of us, it's the last most important occasion of our lives, for everybody.
Well, not only that, and I keep bringing the family into it, but it is a huge relief to family members to know that these decisions are made and that this is happening the way your loved one wants it to happen.
Right.
Yeah, it's really a gift. We oftentimes hear about when those conversations have not happened. And unfortunately, the people that are left behind, the children, the adult children of seniors or spouses, are left with saying, did I do the right thing? So even though it's hard to have these conversations sometimes, it's harder to not have them. Because when you're faced with having to make those decisions and you don't have that chance to talk to your loved one, that is much, much more difficult. And so we really encourage families and individuals that want to initiate this conversation to keep trying.
Now, Christine, there are additional resources for folks who want information on this.
Yes.
Where can they find that?
Yes. Well, the first place they can go is to their website, which is starttheconversationvt.org. On that website, we have some materials that can be helpful to people because we recognize how hard this is. So we've created a conversation guide, and in this guide, we have a number of resources such as worksheets. You ask questions, well, what does that mean? I want everything. This spells that out. It gives you scenarios to say, if this happens, what would you want? This, or this? And so it helps people to think through that process. We also have some facts and information about hospice and advanced directives, and we could send this to you also in the mail if you're not web savvy.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and starting the conversation here. So hopefully folks at home can do the same.
Thanks.
That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.
For a video copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-ATF-3430. Across the Fence is brought to you as a public service by University of Vermont Extension and WCAX-TV.